Because of her innocent beauty and captivating presence, 16-year-old Jenny caught the eye of a man in his 30s the very first moment he saw her. Carrying her tender longing for beautiful love, this budding flower shyly pushed open the door to the adult world. In idol dramas,
I'm a virgin, and I want to stay that way until I'm 17.
Stories about relationships with an age gap are actually nothing new, but compared with those sweet romances filled with pink bubbles, the story we are about to talk about is truly something far more unusual. Today's film is an education, a coming-of-age story that will leave you clear-headed after watching it. It was a damp and rainy season, and while 16-year-old Jenny was waiting for the bus in the pouring rain, a strange luxury car suddenly pulled up in front of her.
Hello. Look, if you had any sense, you wouldn't take a lift from a strange man, but I'm a music lover and I'm worried about your cello, so what I propose is you put it in my car and walk alongside me.
Underneath the seemingly kind offer, both of them clearly understood that there was another intention hiding beneath the surface. Normally, Jenny would never have paid any attention, but it was pouring outside, and the man's manners seemed gentlemanly and proper. While she was still hesitating, he had already carefully settled her cello for her. The man did not presumptuously invite her into the car, but instead slowed the vehicle down and spoke with Jenny in an open and natural way. From the piece she had been practicing to a certain obscure musician, just as he had described himself earlier, the man really did seem to be a music lover, faced with such a polite and refined kindred spirit. Jenny let down her guard.
Can I sit in the car with my cello?
Jump in!
It was Jenny's first time sitting in a luxury car, and she felt a little stiff and uncomfortable. Out of some hidden sense of pride, she could not help showing off a sentence in French, wanting to regain a little ground in some other way. But the man, who called himself David, seemed not to hear it at all, and simply explained that the car was a limited edition model. For Jenny, who came from an ordinary family, that was clearly outside her world of knowledge, and she could only force an awkward smile, her rain-soaked eyes filled with embarrassment. But David's easy way of meeting her where she was gradually warmed up the atmosphere. The two of them talked very well, and even though he deliberately slowed the car down, the destination was already close, so they had no choice but to part ways at Jenny's front door. The rain had briefly let up, but this encounter had already left a ripple in her heart. For some time after that, David did not appear again. Just when the impression he had left in Jenny's heart was beginning to fade, an expensive flower arrangement suddenly appeared in front of her, with a card inside signed by David. A few days later, he appeared once again outside the cafe Jenny often visited. Jenny took the initiative to go up and talk to him, and during their conversation, he suddenly invited her to a concert on Friday night. To ease her worries, David immediately said that there would also be two friends coming along.
And if your mother and father disapprove, then you'll have the tickets and go with one of them. How does that sound?
He arranged everything so thoughtfully and without crossing any obvious boundaries, and Jenny naturally agreed, but her father sternly ordered her to refuse.
I won't allow it!
He firmly opposed his daughter going out with some questionable man, furiously insisting that David definitely had bad intentions. But the moment David appeared in front of him, dressed in a suit and carrying himself with gentle elegance, Jenny's father, who had been raging just seconds earlier, instantly changed his tone.
I'm Jack, this is my wife Marjorie.
You didn't tell me you had a sister, Jenny.
Faced with such a polished gentleman, Jenny's father became awkward like a young boy. As long as she is back by 10, no, 11 o'clock, that will be fine. The father who had once seemed so imposing was just like that, completely handled by David. Jenny was as happy as a little bird just released from its cage, awkwardly and nervously stepping into the adult world. After the artistic and refined concert ended, David took her to an upscale restaurant for dinner. Still carrying the air of a schoolgirl, Jenny widened those clear and innocent eyes. The elegant music, the tasteful setting, everything there perfectly matched the sparkling future she had always imagined for herself. She awkwardly lit a cigarette, trying her best to make her posture look a little more natural. David's friends began talking about Paris, that romantic city that lives in so many people's dreams. With just a few casual words, they painted for Jenny a world of luxury and glittering indulgence. David saw the longing in her eyes, and smoothly extended another invitation.
I'd love to. You fit right in.
Better than here, really.
Isn't it wonderful to find a young person who wants to know things? There's so much I want you to see.
That very Friday, he wanted to take Jenny to an auction, where there would be an original work by her favorite painter on display. But Jenny was still a student, so should she obediently go to class? Or should she follow him into a glamorous event full of high society and see that world for herself? Maybe it was the diamond fishtail gown of the singer on stage that dazzled her eyes. Or maybe it was the nicotine in the cigarette that numbed her nerves. After hesitating for a moment, Jenny could not help but say yes. By the time she returned home, it was already late at night, and her father had gone to bed early, while her mother was still busy at the stove. She shared this wonderful night with her mother, but the woman was too busy struggling with a burnt stew pot and looked completely uninterested. Jenny could only say goodnight in disappointment. She could understand it, because in her eyes, her mother was nothing more than a narrow-minded housewife with little experience of the world. The next day, she shared what she had seen at the restaurant with her classmates, and the envy in their eyes only strengthened her determination to keep the Friday date. But when the teacher arrived for class, his face looked somewhat grim, and he warned the students that they should focus their minds on studying. Known for being cold and hard to approach, he only ever softened his tone when he spoke to Jenny.
Excellent as always, Jenny.
And yet Jenny, the student in whom he had placed so much hope, skipped class that Friday and rushed toward an invitation soaked in luxury and temptation. When they entered, it happened to be time for Jenny's favorite painting to come up, and David leaned close to her ear and placed the power to bid into her hands. This reckless auction game that ignored all cost kept provoking Jenny's nerves again and again. As the eyes of the entire room turned toward her, she suddenly felt as though she too had become one of the people in this glittering upper-class world. This indulgent and extravagant game quickly became addictive to Jenny, but the price of neglecting her studies also arrived soon enough. For the first time, one of her grades barely scraped past the passing line. Her father, who had always pushed her hard, exploded in fury, listing all the money he had spent on his daughter over the years. Every bill supposedly meant to pave the broad road leading Jenny straight to Oxford. That was not love given unconditionally, but an early investment in a financial product. And if his daughter could not get into Oxford, then bringing home a rich husband would also do.
Oh, and by the way, you might be lucky. There might be a man with deep pockets growing out there, because God knows you're gonna need one!
Watching her father shout in anger, Jenny's eyes slowly grew wet. She looked like a child who had done something wrong, helpless and confused. It was only one failed grade, yet the truth of life revealed itself before her in such a sharp and brutal way. Looking at the road ahead, a path clearly destined to be full of hardship, the courage she had worked so hard to build suddenly began to fade. As if by instinct, Jenny thought of David, because the dazzling life he had now looked exactly like the future she had always dreamed of. Just when the atmosphere inside Jenny's home had fallen to freezing point, David appeared like a savior descending from above and swept away the gloom hanging over the family. With just a few words, he had Jenny's stern father laughing out loud. While chatting casually, he falsely claimed that he too had graduated from Oxford, and said he wanted to take Jenny back to his old school to help her expand her connections. Faced with such an easy shortcut placed right in front of him, her father handed his daughter over to David without a second thought. And just like that, Jenny followed David and his two friends to a bar near Oxford. The students here looked refined and well-mannered, but David's friend mocked them for seeming hopelessly provincial and having no sense of style at all. He simply could not understand why Jenny would ever want to study in a place like this.
I want to read English.
Books.
Sorry.
You want to read English books?
Jenny did not know how to answer, because going to Oxford had always been the life path her father had planned out for her. But now she had David, a fast boat of her own, and riding this favorable wind, she believed she would soon reach the distant shore as well. That night, when the two of them were alone in the same room, Jenny shyly confessed something to David.
I'm a virgin, and I want to stay that way until I'm 17.
To her surprise, David said he completely understood, and that he was willing to wait, as long as Jenny agreed to one small request.
May I have a look? Just a peek.
She shyly slipped off her nightgown, and David kept his promise. A warm wave quietly rose in Jenny's heart, but the very next day, when she went out with David while he was working, he firmly refused to let her follow him, and remained extremely vague about what his work actually involved. Not long after David and his friend left, the two of them came hurrying back to the car, their expressions tense as they quickly started the engine. Looking at the extra piece of artwork that had suddenly appeared in the car, Jenny quickly realized what was going on. David's job was to trick antiques out of elderly people who did not understand their value, and then resell them at a much higher price. This kind of shady business operating in a moral gray zone was something Jenny could not accept. As soon as the car stopped, she grabbed her luggage and walked away without looking back. David hurried after her to explain, insisting that he did not believe what he was doing was wrong, and that he was simply freeing those artworks so their true value could finally be realized. and if Jenny did not like that line of work, he said he could completely understand. In the end,
I'll understand, and you can go back to Twickenham and listen to the home service and do your Latin homework. But these weekends and the restaurants and the concerts, they don't grow on trees.
Jenny was persuaded and let him take her hand again. After all, that flower-filled life of luxury had never come from nowhere. All she had to sacrifice was that small sense of justice, and in return she could trade it for a ticket into high society. Not long after that, Jenny welcomed her 17th birthday. Her mother brought out an old-fashioned cake, while her father's gift was a cheap dictionary. Even more awkwardly, the boy from school who had a crush on her gave her the exact same dictionary. The dim lighting, the simple little celebration, everything felt painfully far from the refined and beautiful life Jenny had always imagined. That was until David made a grand entrance carrying an armful of gifts, and the shabby cake and cheap dictionaries were swept aside to make room for a pile of elegant boxes. The schoolboy looked embarrassed, and wisely stood up to say goodbye. David, meanwhile, smoothly suggested that he wanted to take Jenny to Paris next week to celebrate her birthday. But for a man in his 30s to take someone else's daughter abroad was obviously pushing things too far, so her father rejected the idea in a roundabout way. However, all of his concerns were easily dismantled by David's smooth and persuasive words.
Jenny likes to joke about how you're a stick in the mud and all the rest of it, but I know that's not who you are. Otherwise, she wouldn't be who she is.
No.
But I can also see that I've acted out of turn, and I'm sorry.
With that clever move of advancing by seeming to retreat, David successfully secured Jenny's trip to Paris. In that city of romance, they strolled through lively streets, embraced by the breezy Seine River, and welcomed the evening together. In the end, inside a luxurious hotel, Jenny formally stepped into the adult world. Everything was as beautiful and dreamlike as she had imagined, yet a strange sadness quietly rose in Jenny's heart.
All that poetry and all those songs about something that lasts no time at all.
After returning home, Jenny brought gifts for many of her classmates, and even gave a bottle of perfume to that teacher, but the teacher did not accept it, because she knew exactly where that perfume had come from. If she accepted it, she felt it would be a betrayal of the relationship between teacher and student. As clever as Jenny was, she instantly understood the hidden meaning in the teacher's words, and turned away with an unpleasant look on her face. But the teacher could not help calling her back.
You can do anything you want, you know that. You're clever and you're pretty. Is your boyfriend interested in clever Jenny?
Jenny, however, did not understand the teacher's good intentions, and answered with sharp sarcasm. As a Cambridge graduate, the teacher was both smart and beautiful, and yet all she could do now was stand here correcting students' flawed and careless assignments. Meanwhile, Jenny had already been living the kind of life she had always dreamed of over the past few months. Seeing this, the teacher knew there was no point in lecturing her with dry moral lessons, and after leaving her with only one line, "Remember to protect yourself," she could do nothing but let the matter go. Even though Jenny had skipped many classes lately, other than her already weak Latin, her grades had not dropped in any obvious way. At this rate, she might still be able to get into Oxford after all. Then one night, without any warning, David suddenly proposed to her, faced with the most important fork in her life. Jenny did not make a decision right away, and instead returned home and instinctively asked for her parents' opinion. The moment her father learned that David had proposed to his daughter, the man who had always pushed her to strive forward lost all of his former determination. If she could truly end up with David, then even Oxford would have to step aside for him. Her father's attitude left Jenny feeling lost. If marriage was always meant to be the final destination anyway, then what had been the point of all the Latin she had studied, and all the essays she had written? But her father answered in a tone that sounded as though he had already seen through everything.
He wouldn't want you if you were thick, now would he?
All of Jenny's past hard work was dismissed just like that, and she no longer had to deal with those dull and exhausting exam papers, because in the subject of life, she could now earn a high score through marriage. School became something optional in Jenny's life, something that hardly mattered anymore. She stopped paying serious attention in class, and wore that engagement ring around every day as if showing it off to the world. The teacher finally could not stand it anymore.
You know the school rule on jewellery.
Half the girls in this room are wearing jewellery.
Yes, but none of it's going to ruin their lives.
With no other choice left, the teacher could only ask the headmistress to step in. the headmistress tried to stress the importance of education, but Jenny believed she had already seen through the true nature of it. Since graduating from university would still only lead to an ordinary and uneventful job, she felt it was better to live freely and brilliantly while she could. The headmistress was left speechless by Jenny's argument, and instead of wasting more breath, she simply allowed this stubborn student to leave school, far away from the dull and lifeless routine of campus. Jenny began focusing fully on preparing for the wedding, but at that time, she was still too young to understand that every gift fate offers has already had its price secretly marked. It was not until the eve of the engagement that she accidentally found a stack of unfamiliar letters in David's car. In that moment, it was as if she heard something shatter, revealing the twisted truth that had long been hidden underneath.
You're married!
The marriage she had been looking forward to with all her heart turned out to be a carefully packaged lie. She was standing on the edge of a cliff, with a bottomless abyss beneath her feet, and behind her was the path of retreat she had cut off with her own hands. Jenny no longer had the courage to face her parents' judgment, and she wanted David to confess everything himself. But the only answer she got was his clean and decisive departure. The next day, with nowhere else to turn, Jenny went to the address written on the letters, only to run into a pregnant woman who was just about to go out with her son. With only one glance, the woman immediately understood why Jenny had come.
Oh no, don't tell me. Good God. You're a child.
With a sorrowful look on her face and the weary tone of someone who had seen too much of life, the woman completely pronounced Jenny's love story dead. Jenny.
You're not in the family way, are you? Because that's happened before.
Pale as ashes, could only flee in humiliation. After learning the truth, her father wanted to go confront David's wife and demand an explanation, but Jenny said there was no need. After locking herself in her room and crying until she had no tears left, Jenny somehow gathered, from the wreckage around her, the courage to rebuild herself after being broken. She returned to school and begged the headmistress to give her another chance to repeat the year. But the headmistress had already lost all faith in her and refused without hesitation. Jenny did not give up, and instead went to her teacher for help. The moment she walked in, she was stunned by the elegant beauty of the teacher's home, an expensive piano, walls covered in artwork. That artistic and cultured life Jenny had always dreamed of was something the teacher had reached through her own ability alone.
Miss Stubbs, I need your help.
I was so hoping that's what you were going to say.
The teacher's refusal to give up on her became Jenny's greatest source of strength as she tried to start over. She began studying late into the night for an entire year, working even harder and with even more discipline than before. Jenny had always been intelligent, and with that painful awakening driving her diligence, she was successfully admitted the following spring to the English department at Oxford University. As she walked through the campus, a male classmate invited her to Paris, and Jenny agreed without hesitation. She still loved that place very much, but this time, she would grow through her own strength. And Education is a film whose central theme is strikingly clear. The reason I wanted to make this video was actually inspired by a certain review. Life is unpredictable, and if David had been unmarried, who could say Jenny's choice was truly wrong? In a certain sense, that argument is not entirely without reason, but I have heard a similar line from gamblers too. Life is unpredictable, and if I had won everything on that final all-in bet, who could say that my decision to sit at the table was wrong? The moment you stake everything and sit down at that gambling table, what decides your future is no longer fate, but the conscience of the person sitting across from you. And the reason Jenny stepped into that glittering trap was not simply vanity. If life is compared to a game of leveling up through challenge after challenge, then David was simply someone who had already grinded through the levels, only to return to the beginner's village and prey on the weak. The people he targeted were always young girls with no real life experience, because they were easy to deceive, and because he could effortlessly crush them from a position of advantage. He enjoyed their amazement, and fed on their admiration and gratitude, and once he had drained all the life and spirit out of them, he could turn around and walk away whenever he wanted. And that canary raised in a gilded cage had already missed the most important season of her growth. By the time she saw the truth of life clearly and tried to begin again, she discovered that in this failed gamble, she had already lost all her courage. That is why the life you dream of has never had any real shortcut.